So let me explain to you what is the holistic health and happiness process, or I like to call it the H3 process. You see, there are so many different tactics that's being recommended for you to get healthier, to lose weight, to have better lives, to be happier. And many of those tactical things in terms of what you should be doing are great, right? You may have implemented some of those things yourself and have gotten results. However, if those results have not lasted for lifelong, if you feel like you've sort of reverted back to when you didn't implement those tactics, there's something else that we can work on. And that's going to be the H3 process. So let's explain. So in this process, basically, the H3 process involves the entire hierarchy of how do you change and permanently change so you get the results you want. So let's go through each of those things one by one. So you see the H3 process. At the very top here, you have your values, right? Basically, your values define who you are. They're like the root decision sort of makers of your brain that says, in this situation, how are you governed? How are you going to choose what to do in this situation, right? Those are your values. And that could be being honest, being forthright, loving, being compassionate. Some of those are your values, right? So you have at the very top values. Then underneath those values are your beliefs, right? And so your beliefs are basically how do you frame what is happening in the world, right? And so your beliefs are such as people are inherently good, people are evil. I'm addicted to sugar. That's a belief, right? And so your belief now at a lower level will dictate your perceptions. You see, reality of it is our brains can only perceive approximately 5% of reality, right? Because right now, as you're watching this video, you're probably not paying attention to the screen that's, the dust that's on your screen, or if you're watching this on your phone, maybe like how are you holding your phone, your iPad right now, and how your fingers are oriented, or even the marks on your fingers, like all the little details your brain is not paying attention to. It can't, because you would go crazy. And so knowing that we can only see about 5% of reality, and knowing that your beliefs and what you choose to see around the world controls your perceptions, I have this picture here. So imagine this is reality, all the red, and you have this little tiny dot that you can see through. And by changing your beliefs, and only by changing your beliefs, that's how you can choose where to move this dot to, what to pay attention to. And this would be extremely important as we move down, right? And so sort of keep that in mind, your beliefs control your perceptions. And then we have basically, once you see something and your beliefs choose to see that, you're going to have, of course, the follow-through is you're going to have thoughts about it, right? What are your thoughts about? What's the internal dialogue that you have in regards to what you just experienced and saw? And so your thoughts basically becomes your reality, right? Like this happened, right? And so your reality then affects the next step, which is your actions. What are you going to do in response to what you saw based on what you interpreted, based on your receptions, and the dot that you look through reality? And that's going to control your actions. And interestingly, it's a feedback mechanism, right? Your actions then has a certain response, right? Someone talks to you a certain way, you perceive it to be a certain meaning, that becomes your reality. You have thoughts that say, ooh, that meant this, then you take action in response to that. That action now, your body has to say, what did I just do? What was that action for? Of course, that's a feedback loop to your perceptions, which of course is based on your beliefs. Right? And so recognizing this is important, as we'll talk about in a few seconds. And so once your actions are in this process, what you'll figure out is that, imagine when you drive to work or when you go to someplace that you typically go to, you may have this sort of feeling like, right, you got there almost on autopilot. You didn't even really you don't even know how you got there. You got there. You didn't pay attention to all the details. And believe it or not, in life, we operate mostly on what I call habits, right? And so autopilot, you have these habitual responses and habitual things that you do. And so it's these habits that gives us the results that we have in our lives, right? And so, and habits, of course, are a response to repeated actions. If you continue to repeat a few actions, your brain's like, well, let me not manage that, and let me turn that into a habit so it's on autopilot. So this way I can use my sort of executive brain, my frontal brain, to make other decisions. But your repeated routines essentially become habits. And so sort of another part, it gets delegated, right? It's almost like you outsource if you're into business, and to basically take the load off of your thinking brain. And interestingly, many of the things that you want to improve, like your health, your happiness, your business, anything is really all about addressing your habits. But yet, you really can't address your habits unless you think about the actions, the thoughts, the beliefs, and then the values. They all work together. And why this is important? Well, if we take a look at here, right, these things right here, these 5 things, your values, beliefs, your thoughts, your actions, your habits, together make the relationship that you have, right? Your relationship with yourself, your relationship with food, your relationship with what I call contribution, I'll explain that in a minute, and then your relationship with the world. And so if you want to adopt and use this H3 process and having this holistic health and happiness, you want to look at, well, what is your relationship with yourself? Because ultimately, that's going to dictate your happiness, right? And so if your relationship with self is something along the lines of this, right? I'm busy with work, with family, with all these responsibilities. Something has to give. Something has to be sacrificed. And that thing is typically me time, right? So self-care, self-love time. If that's a type of relationship that you have with yourself, that relationship will lead to many actions and many beliefs, and then of course many habits. And the result of that type of relationship with yourself is typically you get sick, you have injuries, your body and your mind, everything kind of breaks down, right? Because you're basically saying other things are more important and you're the thing that's going to give. So if you're looking to improve, and decrease injuries and decrease things that's happening to your body, it's not about the stretches or the actions. I mean, they help, those tactical things help, but the pattern will repeat unless you address the relationship with self by realizing this and working through each steps of this. And so as it relates to food, if you feel like you want to lose weight or you want to gain muscle, you want to sort of change your body, your relationship with food ultimately dictates your response with food, right? And so if you're trying to currently manipulate calories, proteins, carbohydrates, go on certain diets and different programs and follow, different books, all those things are tactical. However, if your relationship with food is not being addressed, then those things will never be permanent. And I'll give an example. So we've talked to people here, and one person shared with me that his relationship with food, he used food as a way to get back at his mom because his mom and him did not get along. And it was his tool that he could use to say, I'm being rebellious and I'm not going to listen to you. So he would eat a lot of unhealthy foods, even though his mom was saying don't eat unhealthy food. So his relationship with food was like this hate-love relationship where he used it as a way to gain control. Now, no matter what program this person goes on, the weight will always be a struggle because his relationship with food was not one of nurturing and kindness and his deep, loving, open communication relationship that you would have like with a person, right? So as it relates to contribution, so I don't call it work, right? When you're born, at some point when you become mostly independent, you contribute to the world. You contribute value, whether it be some type of profession, whether it be your knowledge, whether it be just your presence. It's a contribution, to society. And so the reason I don't want to call it work is because the W word is typically perceived as being something not positive, right? And so something that you do, and then you maybe do some work, and then of course then you can play. I just call it contribution, because if you have this amazing relationship with how you're going to contribute to the world by finding your passion, you will never have to work again, right? It never feels hard, right? And so it's about relationship with what are you going to do to contribute to the world, and finding and connecting to that passion and finding that contribution. And lastly, your relationship with the world, how you perceive what is happening in the world. And this is a tough one because in the media, if you happen to watch the media, it's saying the world is horrible, right? Because negative news gets you to watch the news. And so you have this perception the world is just crazy and chaotic and horrible things are happening. And there's all this noise. However, that starts to affect your values and your beliefs, right? And so then, of course, affects your habits. Of course, then affects everything else. It's this sort of a circular pattern. And so I choose you to question, what is your relationship with the world, right? And so when you address this relationship with self, food, contribution, and the world, and understanding that it all relates to this, this is the H3 process. So on this site, I have many videos and many pages addressing very specific things, very sort of break down in detail these things. So I encourage you to go through the site and consume the materials that best serves your health and your happiness. And so I believe that as you apply effort towards this and understanding this, this is the foundation of having this amazing holistic health and happiness. And that's called the H3 process, right? And so there are many programs out there that sort of will define, how do you paint this amazing picture of your life? I feel like this understanding of this process is the vehicle that you use to get there. Does that make sense? So you still want to have this amazing vision of your life, but more importantly, and studies show this, it's not just about picturing the future and having this amazing picture. It's actually more effective, based on psychological research, if you actually picture what you need to do to get there. Mentally practice the process of getting there will get you there much better than just painting the end result. And so this process is a great vehicle, a great way to approach how to get to your amazing, fulfilled, empowered, and happy life. So I hope you enjoy this information. Go through the site, find all the pieces that you need to help you at this moment. And if there's any questions, of course, I'm sure somewhere on this site there's a way to contact me, because it's my passion to help this spread to the world so people can be empowered, happy, and of course healthy.